We were on a trip last week, and we went to Pennsylvania, and we were at this little restaurant across the street from our hotel. We outgrew my in-laws' house when you have like 5 kids, and they get bigger. Like there's no room on the floor to sleep and stuff eventually. So we split up, and some of us go to a hotel room, and some of us stay with her. And I tried to take a picture of our hotel as we were at a little restaurant across the street, and it got photobombed by this truck. So that didn't really come out too good. And just as I'm taking this picture with Evie, Judah comes running over and wants to get in it. And then all of a sudden they're like, your table's ready. And we took one shot, and the one shot got photobombed by this truck. How many of you feel like your rest, your vacation, your quiet moments get photobombed? Anybody's quiet moments get photobombed? It seems to me that in our world, there is an incredible number of semis that are trying to interrupt you and your peace and quiet, right? So in this picture, this is Route 30, and it is basically an old-fashioned road like 44, but it is the access from Philly to all of the other cities in Pennsylvania to Harrisburg. And it's like, this road has probably one semi to every 3 cars maybe. Like it's just constant tractor trailers. And then probably 1 horse and buggy for every 5 cars or something like that. So like you're sitting there and you're just hanging out like it's night and like it's 10 o'clock at night, and you're just sitting there in your house. And then her parents' house is like, it's closer to their house is closer to the road than the end of the pavilion. And then that's basically like what the hotel is right now on the side of the road. So all night long you hear clickety-clock, 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 vroom, clickety-clock, vroom, clickety-clock, clickety-clock, vroom, right? And so it's just like these tractor trailers and clickety-clock, clickety-clock, vroom, vroom, vroom. It's an insane, busy road. And so I thought this would be a good picture for me to set up the talk that I'm going to give today. Actually, the talk that I wanted to give today, which I'm going to start it, was I wanted to share with you what we learned at sports camp, because it was so really awesome. Our sermon was to go the distance. And we had 6 points in going the distance, and it was the Apostle Paul at the end of his ministry was awaiting a jail sentence, possibly a death sentence, and he didn't know what his future was going to hold, and he's writing letters to the churches, and he writes to Timothy, and in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 7, he says, I have fought the good fight, I've finished the race, and I've remained faithful. And now the prize awaits me, the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give me on that day of his return. And the prize is not just for me, but for all who eagerly look forward to his appearing. And that's what I was going to talk about. I was talking about fighting the good fight. I was going to talk about running the race, keeping the faith, keeping our eyes on his face. And, you know, I had a whole outline that I was going to do. And then last night, just before I was getting ready to go to bed, the Lord dropped a word into my head. That word was a word that maybe you read in the Bible reading plan this week. It was a word that comes out of the book of Psalms, a Hebrew word that is SELAH. SELAH. Now, if you read the New Living Translation, we get ripped off a little bit because it drops a word in the Psalms. Instead of saying SELAH, it says interlude. And if you read the NIV, you got robbed altogether because they just left the word out. It doesn't say anything in there. But if you read ESV or King James, you get Selah or NASB, and it's this little word, Selah. And God dropped that word into my mind last night. So I'm getting ready to bring a word about fighting the good fight, about running the race, about finishing the race, about keeping your faith. And as I'm getting ready to bring this message, it's not sitting well with me at all, because I'm like, I just came off a week of what we call taking a trip or vacation. But typically speaking, like, I always hate it when you guys ask me, how was your trip? Because I don't say that to say don't ask me. Like, it's just I have this tension in how to answer, because I just came out. VBS was crazy. There's all the prep for that, and then there's VBS, and then there's a transition week, and then there's sports camp, and then we go take a trip. But to load 7 people up into a minivan and to travel to Pennsylvania and live on a hotel bed that's no softer than this concrete, and then, like, the reason we went was the boys wanted to go to a sports camp, and a good friend of Rachel's played in the major leagues for a minute before he got injured, and then he played in the minors for 10 years, and he runs a baseball camp, and so they got to go to this baseball camp. So we were running the kids to baseball camp and then visiting with their parents, and how many of you guys know the beautiful weather we had last week? Wasn't that amazing? Like 99 and humid all half of the week, right? And we're just trying to keep everybody hydrated. And, like, we're having these visits and doing it all. But it was like we were running the race. Like, we weren't, like, resting. You know what I mean? Like, we weren't resting. Like, we got 2 hours set back in just traffic on the way down there, and 2 hours set back in the way of traffic on the way home. And when we pulled into the driveway on Friday night, Israel's like, "What does that sound, Dad?" And I'm like, "It's that Corvette." He's like, "No, I don't think that's a Corvette, Dad." And I'm like, "I don't hear what you're saying." So we pull into Big Y to grab some milk so we have something when we get home. And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's the sound of pure grinding brakes, right?" And it's like, so, I know my front brakes are good. We're okay. But that's how much stop and go traffic we had. Right? And then, man, just such a special day yesterday, but I think it's a secret, but I don't know if it's a secret. I think you posted a picture. Yeah, she posted a picture, I can say. So we had a special, Adam and Andrea had their 25th wedding anniversary, vow renewals, really special thing here yesterday, and so it was all that. And then I'm coming into this message, and I'm like, I don't need to do a message. But God just drops this word Selah into my head last night. He's like, you don't need to give a sermon today about running a race. Like, you need to drop a sermon in about how to make sure you have rest in that race. How you have rest in that race. Because, like, I think most of us get the running thing, but if we don't get the rest in the run, then we might be running for the wrong reason, or running the wrong race, or running not strong, right? And so, if the trucks are totally photobombing us all the time, sometimes we need to take a little bit longer of a rest. And so I want to introduce you to this word, if you don't already know it, Selah. Selah. And to help me introduce it to you today, we're going to read Psalm 3, and then I'm going to pull a bunch out of what this word Selah means. It shows up primarily in the Psalms because it's a word that was used to mean, the NLT uses the word interlude, and that's because it was put into a song as a spot in the song where you're supposed to pause and reflect on the previous part of the song. Before you go on to the next part of the song, you pause and reflect on the part that was already there. All musicians know about the power of instrumental, or a pause in lyrics in the middle of a song, or a pause in parts of the song, right? Like when we used to write music, me and Casey used to play in a hardcore, rapcore band and do all this music. Like, it's loud, distortion, aggressive, driving music, and it was critical that you built pauses in it so that the drive was powerful. If you didn't put some breakdowns and some pauses and some gaps, then the drive wasn't powerful, right? In a lot of music, you'll be listening to it, and the lyrics are great, and then there'll be just like a pause and a breakdown. And in the book of Psalms, in the Hebrew, they would write this word Selah in there so that it was a moment where before you go on to the next point, you need to take in the point that was there. You need to pause and receive what was there. And I think that what happens for me It happens to many of us in the world that there is no automatic pause. There is no moment of reflection built into our culture. As a matter of fact, when my kids watch TV, I can't stand modern day TV because I don't know how many of you remember the first Superman movie? There was like 15 minutes of credits before like the first word was spoken in the first Superman movie, right? They developed slow. There was music. You actually showed a person walk across the room. Now everything is clipped and sped up, and the words never stop, and the action. When you watch like an Avengers movie, like you just want to like, what just happened? I think I was in the movie. Like I just got destroyed with action, right? And it's like there's never a calm pause. Kids shows, they never stop talking. It's just constant noise, music, talking, whatever. And in our world, that's what it's like. And so when you try to learn something good, when you hear something great, is there ever a moment to take it in? Like where's the moment where we take in what's right so that we actually receive the right stuff? So that we actually, so today we're going to learn what this word Selah is a little bit. So this is a chapter. I'm going to talk about the chapter really quickly because my plan isn't actually to preach the chapter. I just want to show you the purpose of the word Selah, so I'm going to show it to you in a chapter. So Psalm chapter 3, starting in verse 1. There's 3 breakdowns. The first one, he says, "O Lord, I have so many enemies, so many are against me. So many are saying, God will never rescue him, Selah." This is where he does 3 things: pause, reflect, and praise. The word in the Hebrew means to stop and praise, but it's to pause and reflect as well. So he says this: Lord, I have so many enemies. There's so many against me. So many are saying, God will never rescue me. Pause and stop. Think about that. That's the reality of our life, right? All right. There's always going to be opposition. He does a Selah of trouble. You know what? It's okay to stop and do a Selah of trouble. To recognize that there's trouble out there. That there's trouble after you. You know, you don't just ignore that it's there. You take it serious. You notice that it's there. You acknowledge it. You empathize with one another over their trouble. You take the trouble serious. You know, number one rule of war is to know your enemy, right? And so, like, you do a pause and you say, no, it's real. I'm not making it all up. All right. Thanks for showing me that, God. Right? Pause and reflect. Then he says, but you, O Lord, are a shield around me. You are my glory, the one who holds my head high. I cried out to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy mountain. So he takes another verse, and he then pauses. What did he build in this verse? A Selah of faith, of his confidence, of his hope in God, looking at the glory of God, the shield all around me. You know, it's so easy to just read through a psalm and not actually recognize that there were different thought points, different things that we were supposed to recognize, different things we were supposed to see. Some of these psalms have the word interlude or Selah in there, and actually gives you a pause to say, like, take that in before you move on. And in our life, we're constantly moving, so we forget to take in the blessings and to sit and recognize the good things, also to recognize the challenges and the troubles. So the first one was a Selah of trouble. The second one is a Selah of faith. I cried out to the Lord, and he answered me. Like, I believed in him, and he was going to be my help. And pause and reflect on that. How about you? Do you have a Selah of faith? Like, has there been a moment when you needed help, and you cried out to him, and you remembered that he was there for you? I mean, this Selah of faith is so important, because if we don't take that Selah of faith at one point in time, we won't be prepared for the next time we need to call out in faith and be reminded that he was there for us before. And we can count on him to be there for us again. Then he goes on to the third. It says, I lay down and slept, yet I woke up in safety. For the Lord was watching over me. I'm not afraid of 10,000 enemies who surround me on every side. Arise, O Lord, rescue me, my God. Slap all my enemies in the face, shatter the teeth of the wicked. Victory comes from you, O Lord. May you bless your people, Selah. What am I going to take in there? What did he say? What is this Selah that I'm supposed to reflect upon? What did I just read? I woke up in safety. He gave me, even though all of this was going on around me, I'm not afraid of 10,000 enemies. What am I reflecting on? What am I receiving? Man, he had peace. He had some peace. It was a Selah of peace. And then he goes on to talk about the Lord being his victory. It was a Selah of peace and victory. And you could read through that and even pull out some other things. And like I said, my idea wasn't so much to preach the passage as to just help us understand and recognize that in the midst of some content, we're not going to get the content unless we pay attention and sometimes take a moment to pause and reflect. And so this is a gift that God has given us. It's all throughout the scripture. You know, it says, be still and know that I am God. And Psalm 1, he says, you know, here's what you should do. You need to stop and meditate on the good words of the Lord. Psalm 119 is loaded with all of the, you know, your word. It's, you know, I take it in, I consume it. It's my path, it's my life. I meditate on it, and all of this stuff. So we all know that we should do it. But how do we do it? How do we do it? So I want to talk about the importance of the pause. I want to talk about the importance of the reflect and the importance of the praise. And then we're going to end. So first, to pause. As a lyricist, I used to do what was called rapcore. And in rap music or in hardcore, depending on how fast the song and how many lyrics you're trying to cram into it, you build in breathing places to take a breath, okay? Some sermons, when I have way too much content and I tell you, you're going to have to listen fast this morning, I'll talk so fast that I'm going to be like, hold on, I need to take a breath. I need to take a breath, right? A pause is a place sometimes just to take a breath. Sometimes a pause is just to take a breath, and God built those pauses into our life. So when you say Selah, you know, if we're going to go the distance, like we said at sports camp, if you're going to run the race, you have to think about your rest points. Now, runners will know, you know, when they're gonna catch stride and when they're gonna sprint, right? In sports, I remember hearing Steph Curry say a long time ago that his body was beaten down because they had made it to the finals 4 years in a row. And he didn't do the Olympics because the Olympics would have been 0 off season, and he already was the player who had the shortest off season 4 years in a row because they made it to the finals 4 years in a row. So while other players had 3 months more of a break, he had played 3 months longer than all the other teams, or a lot of other teams, right? And he took a lot of heat for skipping the Olympics one year because he's like, I can't run and play any harder. My body's got nothing left. Like, I need a break. I need a break. Even athletes who we think are in perfect condition recognize that they need to pause. They need to take a break at some point. And God built into our lives 3 major breaks. There's the daily Sabbath, which we call day and night. There's the weekly Sabbath, which is the day of rest. And then there's seasonal Sabbaths that we call the feasts in the Old Testament, and this is what we would call like sort of a vacation. But even more than that, we have to recognize that there's things we've been given that we need to pause and reflect on. You don't need to reflect on the evening news probably, but maybe there was some key event that you do need to think about, right? You probably don't need to go and reflect upon a movie that you went and watched, right? But when you start thinking about important things in your life, when God taught you something, spoke to you, some situation that's going on in your family, something important, you want to take moments to say, all right, I've got to take a breath. I've got to pause here. I've got to pause here. Now, there's a difference between pausing and stopping. There's a difference between pausing and stopping. A pause has the intent of starting again. So when I'm listening to the radio and my kids start to talk to me, and what I'm listening to is, like if I'm listening to the radio and the kids start talking and music is playing over the radio, there's no pause button, right? It just goes on, and it probably doesn't matter because it's probably not that important. But if I'm listening to a podcast and my kids come up and talk to me, what do? I pause it because I don't want to miss what's there. And then sometimes I'll be in the car by myself and I'm driving down the road and I'm listening to a podcast and I got to pause it and I got to pull over and I got to rewind it so I can take a note, so I can write down what I just heard because it's reflect-worthy, right? So I need to pause to capture it because what's going to happen to me if I don't pause to capture it? Yeah, I'm going to wish I remember what was there, but I'm not going to remember what it was. Nothing in me is going to be able to pull it back, right? And so pausing isn't to stop. It's to take in the good thing that we were supposed to receive. And this is how it is with life. Sometimes we need to pause and take notes. You know, I mean, some of you this morning are taking notes. You're taking really good notes, I can tell. Some of you just have a brain that can really capture it. And some of you next week are going to be like, there was something I was supposed to do, but all I see is trucks driving by, right? And no, we got to pause and say, all right, I'm going to take this note. I'm going to say, all right, I have to discipline myself that when there's something there that I was supposed to receive, I'm going to hit pause. I want to soak that in. I want to meditate on it. I want to memorize it. I want to get this into my life. So we pause not to stop permanently, so that we can receive what we were supposed to receive, so that we can take a note, so that we can let it kind of sink in. And that's the reflect part. The reflect part is, okay, I captured it. I paused so that I realized there's something here. But I need now to reflect on it because I feel like that was deep and life is moving on. I need to take some time to let that go deeper. Right? How many of you guys planted a garden? Anybody plant a garden this year? A few of you, right? So when you take that seed, life is full of seeds that are being sown. There's so much information coming our way that it's actually hard to hear what you want to hear because there's so much being heard, right? We have, sometimes Rachel will be talking to me and I'll be like, hold on, start again. I wasn't listening at all. I just hear voices. Like, I hear voices all day long. I don't know if some of them are even there. I know a lot of them are. I don't know. I just hear things all day long, right? And it's like sometimes I need to be like, hold on, can you say that again? I think you were saying something important. And then she'll say something important. And then, I'll be like, I don't know, right? And then you realize that you need to reflect on that, and you need to let it sink in. And so when you're reflecting on it, you want to measure the weight or the value of what's been said. You want to measure the weight of value of what's been offered to you, of the opportunity that's there. You want to say, hold on, let me think about that for a minute. And when we have a garden, we put that seed in the ground. It needs time to germinate, right? It's not going to grow up immediately. It needs time. It needs time to be protected. It needs time to be watered. It needs a chance to develop. And that's what reflection is. When we realize that there was something of value given to us, and when you heard a great sermon, when you read a verse in your Bible reading, when you see a situation in a friendship or whatever, you recognize, I need to pause. Is God speaking to me? Is there something I should do about this? And reflect on it and pray about it and give it to God and give it a chance to germinate. When we were doing our school of ministry, when we were talking about finding the MVPs, your mission, purpose, and vision, we were saying that with God's individual purpose for your life, it's the combination of what you're passionate about and what bothers you. But so often we can ignore what bothers us. And since we don't pause and reflect on it, we don't allow God to give us a purpose and a vision and an opportunity to change the world with what He's already put on our heart. It'd be easier for us just to ignore it. But reflecting is where we say, God, why do you keep showing me this? Maybe I should let it sink in. Maybe I should take some time to reflect on this. Maybe I should SELAH. maybe I should Selah. Let it sink in and give it a chance to germinate. And then there's also then the part where we pause and we praise. The part where we praise. We pause and we praise and we lift up his name in worship. We recognize that like this has come from him in the first place. We recognize that he's the answer to our prayers. He's the hope that we need. He's the one behind it all. And when we pause and we can move it, see, so often all these thoughts and stuff that goes on in life, they hit our ears, and they go in one ear, and because we don't pause and reflect, not only do they not land in our head, they go out the other ear. Sometimes they stay in there long enough that we would have a head knowledge of it. I think a lot of times on a Sunday morning we're singing these songs, and like we heard the song long enough to know the words. But that's not praise. Praise isn't when you pause long enough to know the words. Praise is when you pause long enough to let the words hit your heart. And when we let the words hit our heart, now we can express our gratitude to God. So often, if we don't pause, our praise it just becomes it becomes an intellectual thing where we're offering service or we're offering song. But Selah makes us move it deeper. It makes us move it from a place where we pause to hear it till we reflected upon it. We let it hit our heart and soul. And now we respond not just with an action, but with an attitude. With an attitude of gratitude, an attitude of praise where we've been in his presence and we say, I'm not doing this because I have to. How many of you know when you do things when you do things because you have to, you have a little attitude, right? You have a little attitude. You got a little resentment. You got a little, looks good enough from my house going on, right? When you have to. But when it becomes an act of worship, when God's captured your heart and you see the pain of people and you say, man, God, I want them to see your love. I want those people to discover the love of God. Now as an act of worship, I want to not just help them with their problem, I want their heart to experience God's goodness. I want to show up in their life and be there for them. I need a little Selah in my life. My last month has been a sprint. My quiet time has suffered because the clock was off and the calendar was off and different things happen. And I lose my Selah. And when I lose my Selah, my soul is just doing what it knows it should do instead of like doing it out of a moment of worship. And it's always harmful to us when we do things because we know we should do them, because that's what entrenches us in a religious spirit. And we don't want to be entrenched in a religious spirit. We want to be in touch with the Spirit of God in our spirit. We want to take a moment and say, Spirit, minister to me and let me minister to you. And so this message was not for you today. The message for you today was go the distance, run the race, seek his faith, keep the faith, seek his face, all the things that I was going to preach about. This message was for me because I couldn't run one more lap without taking a pause and doing a Selah this morning. So you got to sit in on my Selah because I needed a Selah, but I hope that you'll take this home. Remember this word and pause. Take a breath before you run. Play it back for a few verses. Just pause it. You're going to run again. You're going to hit play. Just pause it. Reflect on it. Let what's going on. Let God, what God's doing. Let taking in the sunset, hit your soul and minister to you. You could realize how good and amazing our God is. Let it move to your soul and your spirit and your heart and come out as an expression of worship. Let's pray. God, this morning, I thank you for interrupting my sermon last night by dropping the word Selah in there, because I indeed did need it this morning. God, but I pray that it wouldn't have just been for me. I believe as the leader of the church and the pastor that when you give me things, so often it's so that I can share them with the church and that it'll meet needs within them. I pray that we would receive this gift of rest, this gift of an interlude in the chaos of the semis flying by, of the noise of the news, of the busyness of work, of the chaos of our family schedules, and that we would have a moment to just listen to what you're doing, to feel your presence, and to rest in the shelter of the Almighty. God, let this message land and lead us into your presence, I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.